let's start our Steve Wilks conversation. Okay, so let's channel. And again, if you guys got a comment or a question that you want me to get to that might be off topic, please tag me in the chat. Put @John, and then your question so I can see it. I'm flying solo, so I've got all my notes, I've got my videos, I've got all this stuff set up. So just kind of help me pay attention to those. The chat's on fire. I'm loving it. We got a good crowd here already. Buckle in, baby. It's defensive scheme time. The first question comes from Brian White, who's the freaking man. Love this dude. He says, do you think Wilks will stay cover 3, cover 4, or will he switch it up? And he goes into, blitzing. He talks a little bit about disguising coverages and all that kind of stuff. And I want to constantly ping pong this conversation off of Steve Wilks. To allow his words to speak for himself. We break those words down and try to relay what that's going to look like. My favorite part, this is a 30-second clip from the interview with Steve Wilks. This is my favorite part of this whole entire interview because there's a little phrase in here that I just want to exegete, draw out, do everything. Here we go. Steve Wilks, what have the 49ers done well? And what do you want to change?
I think you have to embrace the success that they've had here. I think it's a foundation that we all agree we wanted to keep. And I think there's an opportunity as we go through the process, which we already have, is to try to tweak things a little bit. I still think there's room for improvement. If you talk to the players, they would tell you the same. So when it's not broke, you don't really want to try to fix it. And once again, we've had a lot of success around here, and we just want to continue to build.
I freaking love this. Embrace, but tweak. Embrace, but tweak. No fire sale systematic changes, but tweak it. But tweak it. You got to change some things. You brought me in to coach, right? If I'm Steve Wilks, you brought me here. And again, the reason why we didn't get Vic Fangio was because we didn't want his system. We wanted continuity with the past. But yeah, you still got to coach. You still got to coach. And we saw differences between D'Amico and Saleh, right? I would argue Saleh was not as adjustable, right? He was not as flexible, and he was much more predictable. D'Amico, man, he just let those players play in a very simplified, simple thing, small adjustments, but turned his freak players into freaks, right? Talanoa, Fred Warner, D Ford, he just let them be who they are. Now, what's Steve Wilks going to do? What is this quote unquote tweak? I'm with you, Niner Joe. He said, love the Steve Wilks hire. I mean, it brings one of the few things we have not had. And that is experience. Again, we talk about these adjustments. This is not his first rodeo. That's not what it's going to be at all. And so the question goes back to what Brian said. More zone, more man. What are we going to do? Now, here we go. Back to good old Steve Dubb. More man or zone, because he's done some pretty heavy man defenses in his time in Carolina. What are we going to see here?
I think you have to explore and experiment with everything. My background is diverse in zone as well as man. And I think it can change each week based off your opponent and who you playing. Do I feel like we have the skill set to play more man? Yes. At times, do I want to be a little bit more aggressive with the talent and athleticism that we have at linebacker? Yes.
Hey, I love the term aggressive. There's certain... Okay, I'm going to be really, I've been a part of coaching changes. I've been a part of coordinator changes. I've been a coach coordinator brought in. I've been a part of those things. There's just certain things that defensive coordinators are going to say, no matter the scheme, no matter the team, aggressive, blitz, all gas, no brakes, right? GTFO, whatever you want to call it. Whatever. There's just a mentality. I dropped my son off at practice this morning. Football practice, and it's just there's mentality amongst players, amongst coaches, defensive or offensive guys. Some guys permeate and can do both, right? But it's not very common. There's attitudes and things. Aggressiveness is just what it is. You go back to Saleh, and it was just NASCAR, get after it, all gas, no brakes, whatever else. You go to D'Amico, it is get after the passer, turnovers, aggressive. Our blitz rate one of the fewest in the NFL. Now, a lot of that has to do with Nick Bosa, with Chris Kusarek, and how great this defensive line is. And yeah, look at Matthew right here. Reinvention of the wheel isn't necessary with us. Wilks is in heaven with this squad. I agree. Much better team than he has, been around recently. No doubt about it. Look at Big Papa. Says thoroughly enjoyed the Wilks interview. I just hope he stays for a long time. I think he will. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Greg says Wilks won't be here for more than a couple years. I don't want to jump to this conclusion yet. Wilks is going to be here for a minute. Okay, guys, I just think that's the case. The jumping around, that's difficult. Now, if we're talking comp picks, which I didn't really want to have this conversation, but it does imply Niners are better at it than anybody. He would have to be here for 2 years if he got hired as a head coach elsewhere for us to receive a comp pick for him. So, yeah, 2 years, that's going to be kind of the minimum. I think he'd be here longer than that. Personally, that's just my take, unless we just have, championship #1 defense, back-to-back years, something like that. Then perhaps, but again, I think he's going to be here a while. And he even talked about it, being where your feet are, which I'm so big at. Again, I've been around coaches that were puddle jumpers, literally took a job because they wanted it on their resume and then they were going to jump elsewhere. And sad thing is, those types of coaches usually get promoted faster and reach whatever it is because you build your network better. But that is a pretty shitty way to live a life and to impact the kids or the players or the teams that trusted you. And so if you're always looking out the side, what else is available? And it's so easy to see from a coaching standpoint, from a player standpoint, like, those guys, you're not going to be here. And so I do not get that whatsoever from Wilks in here. I wasn't planning on playing this now, but I do think it's important. This is, and not even just for the 49ers, not even for Steve Wilks or defensive continuity. This right here, I'm just going to be really, really honest. This is life. And I just think this is just such a beautiful principle to adhere to, regardless of your profession or where you are.
I tell you, and this is not just a answer to throw you off or anything like that, but I believe in being where your feet are. Be where your feet are and take care of what's in front of you. I started out at Johnson C. Smith University, Division II school, small school right there in Charlotte, North Carolina. I didn't think about where I would be. I had dreams of it, but I've always just, tried to win the day. And that's where I am right now. I'm not even looking beyond, OTAs. So I just want to make sure this defense is the best it can be. And we're going to continue to build this thing in later.
I think contentment, right? Being content with where you are. Now, if you're not content and you don't like the way that your life, your work, your family, whatever those things are, you got to fight and scratch and claw to get it where you want it. But then once you're there, man, enjoyment is so huge, right? Like, that's just, man, love where you are. If you don't love where you are, find somewhere where you will, but then be content. Ambition's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that. But like, gosh, one of my least favorite traits in people, especially whenever I was teacher, is like, I was next to this lady and she was such a good teacher, but every single day for, I think, 6 years straight. Hey, how you doing today? Like, me, I'm chipper all the time. Well, I'll be better in 4 days when it's Friday. I'll be better at 3:00. I'll be better when it's the weekend. It was like that for 6 years straight. This person was miserable, hated their job, hated their life, lived for 2 days. And I was just like, what the hell are you doing here? Like, you can go do other things. But find something you enjoy. And Steve Wilks had his options. No doubt about it. This is a good spot for him.
The 49ers Rush Podcast.